All right, welcome everybody back to another podcast. Super excited about this one. Me and Alex are going to be going over programming, how to design a program, and hopefully raise the overall IQ and bring you up to speed on if you didn't want to purchase and spend a bunch of money on someone else's program, how you could potentially write your own and just give you a little bit of structure on how to do that. So, uh, me and Alex and our boy Steven and previously our boy Griffin, we've been working out doing different programs, other people's programs, which I like doing other people's programs initially because for one, it's supporting other fitness people that you respect. So that's really cool, and also it's cool to get outside of your own bubble. But you know, me and Alex kind of hit just a little bit of an impasse if we were done with the next program and now, do we purchase another program and try to modify it to what all of us are doing? Because there's three of us in the gym, so it's kind of tricky to sometimes do a hyper personalized program that is very intelligent, but need a laptop every
Hmm.
set to be able to track everything. And then there's other programs that are a little too basic or possibly too much powerlifting or and not a lot of bodybuilding or too much bodybuilding and not enough powerlifting. So, um, Alex, previous programs, what has been your feedback or just thoughts on the previous programs that we've done so far? Some things you didn't like, or
Yeah. So I
mm,
think it was cool. Well, you introduced me to some cool programs. When I first started working out, probably back 2019. It's been in 2019 when I first started working out again. Like even when I used to work out, I didn't really even have a program. I would just use I would just look up best workouts for men trying to build muscle. I would just look that
mm,
up on Google, and then I would just click on one for the day and said, "Oh, that looks good." And I would literally just do that whole thing because I had no idea behind oh, there's a day one. I didn't really go that deep into it. I just thought, oh, if I work out, I'll get big.
mm.
Which I mean is technically true, but
Yeah, and actually, when you're first starting out, as long as you can get some weights in your hands, you'll
yeah.
be doing pretty good.
Yeah, so
Um,
then, or I was just so then after that first one, and then I tried. I remember I showed you that one program I made where it was like 10 workouts of really high
I
sets.
barely, I like barely remember what that looked like.
Yeah, but I'll find it. And I'll send it to you again. But it was funny, and I think I might have deleted that actually because it was pretty. After what we've been doing, I was like, wow, that was hardcore.
Hmm.
um, but yeah, then what else would you so? And then when I first started working out with you, I think the first one we did was the bridge.
Yep.
Um,
Shout out Barbell Medicine, The
yeah.
Bridge. That's a good either beginner's program or if you have been doing very basic barbell exercises, it's kind of a good transition to give you a little more variety
Hmm.
and more frequency and give you a little bit of idea of how simple programming can be.
Hmm.
So,
It's
uh,
funny. Well, it's
yeah,
just
go
funny
ahead.
because I thought I was like advanced level, and then once I started learning about it, I was like, wait, I don't know anything.
Dude, I was actually in the same exact spot when I was just doing random workouts. I mean, I had read Arnold Schwarzenegger's uh, bodybuilding encyclopedia. I had read all the bodybuilding.com things, and I was like, man, like I'm just looking for that pump, and I'm just trying to go as hard as I can. And then I was trying to go to failure all the time, and everything was random. Uh, and of course, you're going to get progress in the first 6 months to a year that you start lifting weights, even
Hmm.
if you're doing it all wrong and you have no rhyme or reason. So that's kind of the cool thing about being a beginner is that you can get results off of a really crappy program routine.
Hmm.
Uh, so that could be another subject of just how when you're a beginner, you don't have to hyper focus on trying to spend a ton of money on finding the perfect program for you and having paralysis by analysis because that was definitely me of just like I would get stuck on trying to find the perfect program and then
Hmm.
um, I would end up program hopping or not sticking to a program or uh, every program was completely different so I was never like consistently getting results. Um, but about our program that we've developed, there's a lot of different styles of programming, and uh, the style that we've done before is more powerlifting. Then we shifted more into a hybrid of both powerlifting and bodybuilding. Some call it power building. And what we're doing, I would say, is still kind of power building, but probably a little more biased to bodybuilding. A bodybuilding program initially is going to have more variety, a lot of different kinds of exercises for the same muscle group. A little bit of variety for one muscle group is beneficial for possible a little more muscle growth. So instead of doing 10 sets of the same bicep curl, it might be beneficial to do 5 sets of a bicep curl and then 5 sets of a hammer curl. It's still working the bicep. You're still just going through flexion and extension with the elbow. It's as simple as that. But the slight variation might offer maybe some different stimulus. It's nothing major, but
I think even when you're a beginner, little stuff like that doesn't really matter. The most important part is just building the base, I guess, the foundation, or like learning the movements and
totally.
Yeah, getting comfortable with everything.
So with our program, like what you're saying, is we still have the basics in there of a squat, a deadlift, which is squat, deadlift, benching, and some kind of horizontal pull for a back exercise, a vertical pull for back exercise, and the same thing for pushing, a vertical push and a vertical or a horizontal push. So those are the very basic kind of movements, and then tacking on more variations is a good way to not only for one get more volume but have variety. So initially when developing the program, if you had a cascading hierarchy of level of importance and priority of like, all right, I'm going to start a new program, what are the things that are most important initially? And I would say the first thing is to identify if you are looking for more strength or bodybuilding. I think those go in hand, but the training could look totally different depending on which one you're going for. So if you're going more strength training, then you don't need as much variety, and you can stick to mostly just barbell movements like squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press, barbell row, and maybe a lat pull down.
I was about to bring up the 12-week strength program. That's the second one we did. So that one was cool.
Yep.
That was the one where it really pushes your limits. I mean, you get to the end and you think, I mean, that's when we like you hurt your back, and then me and Griffin were both super tired all the time. And like that, it really just like pushed the limits of like what we thought, we could do. Yeah. But it's like, so I mean, this is obviously a more advanced program that Nick had to he basically took like this codec and like translated it into like this program, and then we just followed it. But yeah, it was cool. It was had a decent amount of variety, I guess, for what it was. But it was like, all the accessories. So you do like the lifts, different reps, different types of lifts, like your pause squat, your pin squat, all that kind of stuff in there. It works out to kind of just build your certain strengths and like your explosiveness and like, I guess, over just certain movements.
And to pick back up, once you've identified where you want to be on that spectrum between bodybuilding and strength training, with a lot of variety or with a less variety and more focus, you could call it specificity. So more focus on specific movements. Once you've identified that, then you can kind of move into the next things, which are going to be, some might argue that this is the most important thing, which is volume, intensity, and frequency. Those three things are kind of like the king, the queen, the jack. So volume, intensity, frequency. Volume, there's a lot of different ways to define volume, but very simply the way I like to think of volume is not necessarily reps times sets. I like to think of volume in more of just a hard set, just to make it simple. And again, I'm sure there's tons of people out there, very educated, very smart, that have different ideas of what is volume. But at the end of the day, how much work did you do? So typically, the recommendation from even like Brad Schoenfeld, who is one of the leading scientists he is currently conducting, I highly encourage anybody, if you want to know more about volume, Brad Schoenfeld or Mike Israetel are experts in the field. Even uh, the 3D crew, 3D Muscle Journey crew. They're experts in volume. So volume is a whole seminar in itself, but ultimately a hard set I would consider one set for that exercise. Should be difficult enough to where it's close to failure, not necessarily to failure every single time, but close to failure would count as one good volume set. During the week, I would recommend to have anywhere from 10 to 20 hard sets per muscle group. So if you technically like 10 reps or 10 sets per muscle group should be able to grow a lot of muscle. And then, but 10 sets doesn't really feel like super fatiguing or difficult in a week. So usually then you can start pushing into more volume. Typically, the more volume equals more muscle mass. And that is the key driver for hypertrophy or making a muscle bigger is volume. So that's why I'm probably going to talk a lot about just volume. I'm going to continue to bring that up.
Volume?
Volume. And so volume, a good place to start is somewhere around 10 sets. If you're not used to tracking how many hard sets you're doing, maybe start with 8 hard sets and then bump it up to 10. But every week you want to try to increase volume a little bit over time if your goal is bodybuilding. Strength training, volume definitely has its place, but bodybuilding, volume is going to be your main focus. And it's different approaches that people like to take, whether it's starting really high volume and then working your way down over the weeks, or I like to start with a little bit lower volume so you can kind of work in, feel the exercises so you're not crazy sore, and then slowly add volume week to week. Maybe 2 to 4 sets a week. Some people might say 4 sets is a lot, but I kind of like just bump it up quite a bit. So volume 10 to 20 sets a week per muscle group. And when you're developing a program, if you're someone who's like, my calves are phenomenal and they're just, luscious and great, I don't need 10 sets of calves. So maybe I'll just be doing 3 sets. And then you can look at another body part that is stubborn. And I'm speaking to someone who has been lifting for 3+ years, or around that time. If you have a stubborn body part, like you're saying, like Alex, you were telling me when you first started was your chest. You wanted to grow your chest as much as possible. So if you're more resistant to growing muscle in your chest, you're probably going to be someone that needs to be in a higher volume bracket. So initially starting a program, I would probably have you up to like anywhere from 10 to 15 sets on chest right away, and then try to work up to 20, maybe even try to push a little bit past 20 sets for chest. If you were like hyper specializing of like, I have to grow my chest no matter what. So that's kind of the
even though everyone knows it's all about the calves at the end of the day.
I know. I mean, we should ultimately just take volume out from all the other body parts and just put it all on calves.
One set of bench, 1 set of deadlift, 1 set of squat, and then 30 sets of calves every week.
Right. So the volume doesn't have to be equal per body part, I guess is what I'm trying to get across. It's not like you have to do 10 sets of calves, biceps, triceps, shoulders, and you could even get into the weeds of like the front delt, side delt, rear delt have to have 10 sets each. Like that can get really into the weeds, and it doesn't have to be that intense. But just generally, that's around where you should be. Now, I think I've covered that a little bit. So over each week, you want to try to be increasing volume. Now, the next thing to go over is going to be intensity. Intensity is just, again, hard to define, but in general, I like to think of it as how much effort you're putting into that set. So like I was saying, a hard set, I would say, is an intense set. So it doesn't matter how many reps you're doing. If you're doing 1 heavy rep or 20 reps, that's not that heavy. But once you get to 20, it was very difficult. That means it was not very intense, the 20 reps. But then the 1 rep that was really heavy, that was a much higher intensity. You could call 1 rep max 100% intensity. And then the higher reps you get, the less that percentage gets. So that's why you might see a coach say, hey, we need you to do 5 reps at 75% of your 1 rep max. So if your 1 rep max was 100 pounds, then that would mean you needed to do 75 pounds for 5 reps. And that would be 75% intensity of your 1 rep max. Intensity you can gauge either from by feel, and actually that's what I like to do. I've been on very strict programs before that gauge your intensity by percentages, and everything is a percentage, and you always have to be increasing or lowering according to that. And I think that's a little too rigid. I'm a little critical. I'm more biased to going by feel on intensity of how many reps you have left in the tank, as opposed to going off of strict percentages. I don't know, Alex, how do you feel about, because you've been able to experience both now as far as going off of rate of perceived exertion and actual percentage, and we've done a hybrid of both, which I think is awesome. But what's kind of your
So the hybrid, well, I like RPE better, obviously, because it's like I don't even need a calculator to do it. I just kind of do my warm-up sets, and wherever I feel like, because after doing enough sets, you just kind of realize like, oh yeah, this weight is definitely like a 7 today or something, you know. So it's way easier to actually judge it than if I'm doing a percentage. Like, yeah, if I'm like, let's say I didn't eat a good meal, or I didn't, my stress level was high that day or something, and I didn't, couldn't push the weight. Like the percentage is a little harder to gauge. Well, I guess because that's the 12-week strength program. That was the percentages, right? Or like a hybrid kind of.
Well, it was mostly RPE, but what was cool is they gave you a chart.
That's what it was, the chart, but it was like the percentages.
They gave you a chart to say like, hey, 4 reps at RPE 9 is going to be up like in the 80s, like 83% or something like that. I'm totally pulling that out of nowhere, so don't take that as like that's what it means. But RPE you can put a percentage to it, but both have pros and cons. So like you're saying, Alex, I mean, that's my exact con to percentage-based programming, is that it's basing it off of your best lift 100%. My best lift ever was 330 pounds on bench press. Now, I don't know that I could hit 330 pounds every single day of the week. Some days I'm going to be a little weaker, some days I'm going to be a little stronger. So basing my programming for the next month off of 330 pounds, I mean, that's a number that's always moving.
Especially so what we're trying to do, I mean, I guess if you're doing a strength program, you're eating obviously a lot to keep up with that. But when like right now we're trying to lose some weight to get lean, shredded, muscular, cheese grated glutes. So, it wouldn't really be as accurate, I guess. So if your goal is to lose weight, it's a little harder to base out percentages because, like if I, 1 rep max, right, when I was like at my peak weight, you're going to have obviously more strength to complete that set than if you're losing that weight. And at the end of it, you're going to be so exhausted if you are able to keep up with it. Because, I mean.
So that's why in our program, we're doing a little bit less volume on a squat, bench, deadlift. Like we've only been doing 3 sets of 6 instead of doing 5 sets of 2 reps. 5 sets of 2 reps would be a whole lot of sets, and 2 reps would be very heavy and intense, and that would create a lot of fatigue that would then possibly take away from all the other exercises that we would do after that. And then we'd feel taxed and kind of burnt out from that first super heavy exercise that maybe we only get we were supposed to do 5 sets of biceps that day, and we only got we still did 5, but they were kind of wimpy sets, and we just felt held back, so right. So that's where, in a bodybuilding program, you're typically not going to see like super heavy squats, benches, and deadlifts consistently all the time.
Yeah, well, because like you said, it's just volume, right? Like you're just trying to get the volume in there, not necessarily. I mean, and the intensity has a factor in it too, but really just the amount of reps that you're doing on that muscle group.
I'm gonna want to try to keep some intensity on the main lifts,
just you don't want to
try to maintain those exercises, keep them sharp as possible.
Strength, you don't want to be wimpy.
Yeah,
I don't want to look strong and be a string bean, and not be able to lift anything.
Yeah. So I guess so. That's a little bit about intent. I guess a lot of it about intensity.
Hmm.
So volume and intensity are going to be the key drivers in your program that you're going to need to factor out. So when I like to write a program, I like to lay out the how many days I'm going to be working out that day. So for us,
Hmm.
it was 5 days a week. A 2 day a week program, a 3 day a week program are perfectly fine depending on your goal. But for me and Alex and Steven, we have the time for it. We have the ability to get into the gym 5 days a week, and we want to try to really stack on volume and try to build as much muscle as possible. Since we've been lifting for a little while now, we can afford to
Hmm.
pack on more volume into our workouts, which honestly is a downside. I mean, if you could gain maximal muscle uh, with only 5 sets per body part, I mean, that's freaking sweet. And beginners can do that. And that's what's really cool about being a beginner is that you could do low volume and gain maximum muscle.
Hmm.
It's as you become more experienced and more resistant to muscle growth, you have to start adding in more work over time to elicit a new result.
Hmm.
So I was kind of hound that into beginners of like, hey, you're in a great opportunity. Uh, I have to do triple, quadruple the work to get a fraction of the result that you have to.
Hmm.
Um, but I guess I'm kind of getting off track. So volume, intensity, and then frequency. When we lay out the program, we're figuring out how many days a week we can work out. And then that's where you can kind of pick what style method that you would like for your workout, whether it's upper day. We've been doing an upper, lower power day. So meaning we're doing probably a little heavier. We don't have as much variety in that day. Um, so for example, our leg day is going to be heavier squats, heavier leg press, and a heavier RDL, and then some
Hmm.
calves at the end. So not a ton of exercises for the day, but they're going to take time since they're going to be pretty heavy. So we have longer rest intervals, and uh, yeah, it just takes longer to warm up, longer to set up, and get into the next set.
Hmm.
So, so that'll be day 1 and 2 for us. Day 3 and 4 are going to be upper hypertrophy day, meaning trying to make the muscle bigger with more volume variety. So we're going to have more exercises. Our rep ranges are going to be a little higher, like somewhere in the 8 to 15 to 20 rep range. Um, and so that's upper, lower for day 3 and 4, hypertrophy days. And then day 5, I kind of just mixed in both deadlift for powerlifting and then some tacking on extra volume on smaller body parts like biceps, triceps, shoulders. I don't know if I put calves in there, but I just have to look at it. So that's kind of a general
Hmm.
layout of how you're going to go about it is what's your volume, what's your frequency, what's your intensity. Intensity, what's nice about intensity is that you're not going to have to be super pinpoint on what your intensity is. You can kind of just go by feel
Hmm.
by setting the amount of rep range and just make it tough, get close to failure, which there is kind of a downside to that too. Instead of going percentages kind of force you to lift the weight you're supposed to lift. Going by feel, there is some evidence to show that people tend to pull back or not push as hard as they possibly could. Um, so when lifting in higher rep ranges, that's definitely a factor, and
Hmm.
that's something to kind of overcome. I think in powerlifting and lifting super heavy, I mean, it's kind of like you can get another rep or you can't. It's not really like a mental thing.
Hmm.
I don't know what would you say about that, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in positions where it's like damn near impossible to already get just one rep, so I can't imagine doing another one. Where you're like pushed to the brim already.
Yeah, you can kind of feel where
Um,
failure is going to be. It's close, right on the edge.
yeah, like you can. I mean, to a certain extent, like even when we're doing bicep curls today, like that lesson, I just like my mental toughness is there. Like it's just I could not get any more. Like
Hmm.
for whatever reason I could not push another set because my like it just won't go. Um,
Yeah. So I guess it just depends on the personality, the environment that you're in, and you know the accountability you have around you. So are you a person who typically tends to push? I've trained clients before that I have to
mhm.
usually hold back and tell them, hey, take an extra 30 seconds of rest, and hey, we don't need to always be going to failure every single time. I want you to go until you feel like you have 1 or 2 reps left in the tank, and then stop.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other personality types that tend to usually stop early or who get distracted during their set, and they need to be pushed a little harder. So I guess figure out what your personality is, and you can either use percentage.
Well,
or
and then when you start, like if it's a
Yeah.
beginner, like I guess, yeah, if you're a beginner, you learn. I mean, you really don't know what your limits are. So once you start gaining more experience and just start doing it, obviously, like you said, if you're a beginner, you're doing the work, you're gonna gain incredible results already. So, yeah, but if you're, I mean, you'll just learn your limits and you'll know like when to keep pushing yourself, and you'll feel more confident that you can push yourself even more. As you keep, doing it, exercising.
Yep. Yeah. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it over time.
I get.
I mean, even if you have bad form when you're first starting out, your body's going to naturally try to get to a more efficient spot over time. But you should still do your due diligence to make sure that you're filming yourself, checking your form, making sure things are efficient, doing some good homework on different things to make sure you are efficient in your lift.
Yeah. So I guess like if you were let's say you were doing a program like like you did the other day, you were building a program from the bottom up. So first thing I guess would be to find out what type of program you want to do, whether you have specific goals for it. And then the second one would be to determine like how many days a week you have. Then you can build around that, and then once you pick frequency, then you can choose volume, and then volume you can choose intensity.
Intensity, I would almost do.
Would you do before that, or?
I would do the intensity as I'm picking the exercises.
As per exercise, not just based on you.
Yeah, I like to have if you're working each body part twice a week, I like to have at least one exercise for quads that's going to be super heavy, and one exercise that's maybe a medium, and maybe a second exercise that's more of a lighter weight, but it's going to be more of a burn, like upwards of 15 reps or so. And that's how you can kind of pick your exercise selection and how heavy you're going to be going. Because it's good to have a spectrum of all of those different types.
Wait, so I guess we were talking about, like, we did an episode on this before. We were talking about, like, the amount of work, like, the amount of weight, I guess, divided by the amount of reps. Like, it kind of equals out to the same. So if you're doing heavier, less reps, or you're doing lighter, more reps, it kind of equals out to about the same. I think we were talking about it earlier. Or like
as far as muscle growth
goes.
Yeah. So if you're doing 5 reps close to failure, a hard set of 5 compared to a hard set of 15, 15 is going to burn a whole lot more, and it's going to keep you winded, and there's going to be a lot of other effects to that. But then a set of 5 is going to be more it's going to feel heavy. It's going to feel like you're taxed, but you're not going to be out of breath much. But both of them have the same amount of hypertrophy gains. So
I guess it just depends what your goals are at that point then. And then as far as like exercises, like what exercises to pick, we can probably do one on this. It would be cool. I don't know if we have enough time or if because we could go. I could literally take days to record on different exercises. Like, but that would be a good episode to kind of pick. I mean, the main ones we cover, obviously, like if you're trying to gain strength, just the main ones, like Nick just said, barbell exercises, like compound movements to maximize your efficiency, to build overall strength, like your squat, deadlift, overhead press, bench press, and did I miss one?
Squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press, some kind of
row, maybe a row,
pull up and row,
deadlift, pull up, row. Yeah,
those are some basics.
Yeah.
And then everything around that,
calves, obviously.
Again, if you're trying to get about 10 sets a week per body part, then you can kind of pick out the body parts that you would want to work, and ideally you want to work all of them. So what's cool about those bigger compound exercises is those kind of bleed over. So an overhead press isn't just shoulders; it's also working your traps, your triceps. You could say your core is heavily stabilizing during that entire exercise.
Yeah, especially during those deadlifts. I started getting thick, not like thickening, but like my core kind of felt like wimpy before I started, but now it's like like this thing is solid. Like I feel like I could knock out a train or something with it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's crazy what that
Uh,
does.
I would say try not to waste your time with a lot of small exercises. Don't buy into all you got to work all the little stabilizers and whatnot. The
Hmm.
stabilizers are meant to stabilize, and if you're
Those
doing an
will,
exercise, they're stabilizing. It's
and
they're
then those
there
will
just to
strengthen. Yeah,
support.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like all these
So I
hip
don't.
hip flexors and what random stuff you see. Like,
Yeah, like all the rotator cuff and all the tiny muscles. You got to make sure you're working all those. And it's like, what do you think is happening during a deadlift? Do you think
yeah,
my stabilizers aren't stabilizing? I'm pretty sure they're. If I wasn't stable, I would
yeah. Like it's
freaking
funny how
fall over or fold over, you know?
it's funny how
So
something like that, like you don't really until you see that other side of it. It's like, wait a second, it's working at the same time. It's like you don't really see it because you see an article. It's like how to do this. It's like or how to build your whatever your sternomastoids or your stabilizer muscles, and it's like, oh wow, this is interesting. And then they go over. It's like you want to build your stabilizer muscles because this will improve your overall balance. Like, and then you actually look at it, it's like, wait a second, what are you doing then if you're doing these main lifts? Or like, are you like
yeah,
are your workouts just consisting of ultra specific like targeted muscle? Like, because if they are, you're obviously wasting a lot of time.
yeah, because
Um,
you just get further away from practicality of
that's
like
a
what you would actually be doing in real life.
that's what we see. This people just laying around in the grass doing these like random movements, like
Yeah,
and foam rollers and
exactly.
like what are they doing? Like that's not helping you. I mean, maybe it is, but I guess at the end of the day, if you're moving, you're moving.
That's 100% correct. Like we shouldn't hate too much, I
We
guess,
shouldn't hate, but
on
it's
people exercising.
yeah, they're
Um,
exercising. I mean, we can hate on people not exercising.
Yep, yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
But rest assured, just doing a squat or a deadlift, all your stabilizer muscles are working very hard, by the way, too, along with your
Hmm.
primary muscle groups too. And also your balance and coordination have to heavily be involved to not fall over when you're under a lot of load and resistance. And those exercises are just very practical, something
Hmm.
you are going to be using throughout your day, uh, whether it's going upstairs or having to squat down and take a poop. You're going to need to be able to have stabilizing for that. So,
Yep. Yeah.
um,
Exactly.
so to wrap it up, I think my biggest advice for designing a program is don't overthink it. At the end of the day, as long as you're adding more work every week,
Hmm.
then that's the right direction. Um, and then you can get into a lot more nitty gritty stuff for macro cycle, mesocycle, and microcycles
Hmm.
for programming. But don't worry about that a whole lot. Ultimately, have a starting point, slowly add more work, whether that's adding another exercise for that body part or adding another couple of sets for that body part.
Hmm.
And then also the mentality should be to also try to add weight if you can. If you're adding weight and your form is changing, then either your form is changing or you're not able to complete the reps that you were wanting to do, then you haven't gotten stronger at that exercise. Uh, so maybe you should only really add weight when you can do that weight perfectly, like just
Hmm.
like how the other reps look. So add weight when appropriate. So hopefully over the time you are getting stronger at those specific exercises, and over time you are doing more work.
Hmm.
And more work over time will elicit a result for a bigger muscle, stronger muscle,
No.
more stabilized muscle. You know,
Yeah, I think it'd be cool.
those type of factors.
We could like post a sample program, or we could post the program we're doing, post it
Sure. Yeah.
on the Instagram and whatnot, so people want to use it. And
Sure.
I'd like to try to build a more active community than we have right now.
Yeah.
So that way we can get some feedback and like get people doing it, see what works for them. All of that kind of stuff based on around a community.
hmm I'm actually
Um,
really proud of the week that I've put out. So we have our base week right now, and then the next week I will be adding quite a bit of volume, especially on shoulders,
mhm.
arms, calves, and probably a little bit of quads too. My biggest downfall is always my shoulders. My shoulders aren't like big 3D delts, so I think that that's the defining thing of somebody looking jacked in a shirt without a shirt is if they have big delts,
I
and
think chest
that's just
too.
That's fair. That's fair.
Because like my shoulders are decent, like they've been obviously better, but like my chest, once I noticed that, is like, because then it just kind of sticks out, you know. You just like, they'd be like, damn, that guy's got some double D's, and like, you know, if that makes any sense.
Exactly.
But yeah, I'll post it to. We're on Instagram, Worth the Wait. You can just look up Worth the Wait. It'll have the podcast logo on there. We'll post it on there.
Yeah, and ask questions about the program. It's pretty simple, straightforward, but it is a lot of work, and I would say it's definitely more of an intermediate program. A beginner should be doing more basic barbell stuff because you're going to get way better of a result and lay down a whole lot of really good fundamentals that you might miss out on the program we're doing out right now.
Yeah, so I think the bridge, if you're looking for a really good program, like especially like if you read the content that is before the program, that's great content that you should. I mean, if you're looking to advance your fitness knowledge, that's a great thing to read. Those, I mean, the guys who wrote that are very smart. They've actually put a lot of research into it. Yeah, you can read that.
You'll get big results. Like,
do that program, get results. You'll build your confidence. You'll get strong. And then you can go from there, decide what you want to do after that program. Be like, oh, I want to do it again, or I want to do a different program, or I want to focus on this now, you know? And that's something that I was glad that Nick showed me, because I was like, okay, good. I built up my foundation, so now I'm a lot better at squats. I'm more confident at them. I know what all these mean. I know what all this, you know, I know what the RPE is. I know how to do this. Like, all those little details kind of fit into place after you start somewhere basic, like, because you're only doing like 3 workouts a day, really. Pretty easy, but they take forever because you're doing a lot of weight.
Definitely.
Which might not be everyone's goal, but yeah. Unless you have anything else to add.
I love talking about programming. I think it's super fascinating, and it's always forever changing. So I wouldn't mind having more episodes about programming, getting more specific about exercise selection.
Yeah, I think that would be the next one.
Fatigue,
so I'll like
sports performance and, you know, your different intention for development, because a lot of people have different goals. For us, we just want to get jacked and look good. Other people are like, I want my golf swing to be better, or I want my vertical to go up, or which is kind of possible, but not totally. But if you're more of a different athlete, you know, your programming might look different. Strength training.
Yeah, cool. And then I think so. This one I think we'll title like programming, the basics.
Make your own program, the basics.
Yeah, make your own program, the basics, and then I'll do like, what is it? Frequency, volume, and intensity, and then I'll do that. And then the next one I'll do will be like, whether it's the very next podcast or another future podcast, we'll do like programming, exercise selection, and then we can talk about more into depth about like what goes into that.
That would be an excellent one. And then what to do after program's done. What do I do? So that'll be a good one. So how to wave your programming, volume, intensity, how.
And we could do also probably what we'll do. I mean, there's so much to cover in fitness. It's pretty exciting, actually. Could we do like how to cater your diet to your goals? That might be a good one.
Yes, that's actually super important too.
Because that's something that I still struggle. I don't even know. Like, I think I probably went over my calorie limit just with my dinner today, unfortunately. But I did work out today, so we'll see. We'll see. Because I only had the shake today, and then I had the dinner. So I didn't eat that much today. So I think if I ate breakfast, maybe it'd push me over there. So I think I'm still pretty good.
Hey man, well, solid.
Cool. Yeah, good episode.
Thanks for coming out. Thanks for anybody who's listening this far. We appreciate you so much. Hopefully you learned something. We just want to raise the IQ of everyone around us.
Yeah, it's fun to talk about. I learn from Nick every time I just listen. So, I hope you learn too. Nick is super smart at this stuff. So, and then you can message us anytime. If you have more questions or anything. I mean, obviously, and then some of the people that we refer to too, you can go follow them, like Brad, and then some of the other people you mentioned.
Brad Schoenfeld. Brad Broenfeld.
Yeah, so just some of those other people too will help you learn more. Just what they post, you can just read it. Good stuff. But anyways, I think that's it. Thanks for listening.